2-point hospital staffing. So we're going to go through the staff menus and options on 2-point hospital. This is what it looks like. This is your staff. You have one screen that shows all of your staff, and then you have doctors, nurses, assistants, and janitors. And they're all working in the hospital. They are all employed. They're all receiving a salary. In this particular case, I selected all, and it's showing from the most experienced to the least experienced. So first we have the name of the staff member. This is probably the room that they're assigned to. This is the number of levels of skill they have. There's a little circle that goes around, and this one is in the beginning, and many of the others are at the end, which means that they have not been promoted yet. And then we have over here, we have skills that they've been trained in. And you'll notice that there's a dark gray circle, which denotes that they are ready to be trained in another skill. I don't remember what these two values are. One of them is probably happiness with the salary, and the other one's probably energy, because obviously when they get tired, they go to rest. You want to avoid staff that has too many diverse skills. The specialized skills, for example, this guy here, the psychiatrist, it's really good because if he's got 5 of these, he's going to do a great job diagnosing and treating people in the psychiatry room. And there's a few examples where you've got, this is genetics, this is one of the radiation, the Megatron or whatever it's called, where they might have to have one of these plus a bunch of other skills so that they can work on a certain machine. And you're going to have to decide if it's going to be diagnosis or treatment skills. At the beginning of the game, it doesn't matter so much. I usually only hire people that have no skills or have one skill or have identical skills. And the ones that are mixed, like the ones here with the surgery, why would he have surgery and work the diagnosis machine? They're in 2 different buildings. Many reasons why they shouldn't do that. So at the start of the game, you want diverse skills, which is going to be hard to find. But at the end of the game, you want specific skills. If you're losing money, you may have overpaid staff that has to be fired. So the staff member here with more skills gets paid more money. He's more expensive. As your game continues, the staff becomes more and more skilled. They receive a bigger and bigger salary. It becomes more and more expensive. And sometimes the only thing you can do to save money is to fire your expensive staff and rehire cheap staff. Try to build all your rooms based on the staff required. So, for example, put the nurses on one side, put the doctors on the other side, and the rooms that use nurses and doctors, such as surgery, put in between. And the reason why is because when the nurse goes to the lounge and then back to work, you don't want them walking all over the hospital. You want them to stay in the building that all the nurse rooms are. And you want all the diagnosis rooms together and all the treatment rooms together, because a nurse that does diagnosis will tend to be in the diagnosis rooms, and one that does treatment will tend to be in the treatment rooms. You cannot reduce the pay for staff. Your only choice is to fire them if you need to reduce wages. Be careful when raising your pay because you can make them happy, but it's possible that you can give them too much of a raise. They're not going to become any happier once they meet the maximum amount of happiness. And wages are a big expenditure. You can find staff that will work for less pay or find staff that will work harder for the same pay. So over here you see we've got some that are unhappy with their pay. They're going to need a little bit of a boost. And there's a check mark. You see it says satisfy pay request. You hit the check mark and it will do all of them at the same time. But if you have someone who's lazy or who litters a lot, you might want to get rid of them and replace them with someone who's a hard worker. And there are staff who will work for less money. So look at the traits to see if there's one that's beneficial. In the beginning of the game, don't worry about it. But once you're in the later stages of the game, you might want to get rid of some of the staff that's not as good and replace them with better staff. Look for desirable staff traits. The better the traits, the better they will be in the long run. For example, this one has motivation and gross, which means that he probably doesn't like it when there's litter, but he's motivated, which means he's going to work harder. A litterer will contribute to making the building dirty, which adds work for your janitors, and it may cause people to leave the hospital without treatment. A blue circle, you see how there's a blue circle around the star for Homer Grotto? That means he's ready to be trained in a new skill, and they will expect higher wages. They will be unhappy if they earned the ability for the new skill and did not get the training or a pay raise. Certain skills are required for certain rooms. In this case, we have psychiatry. Only psychiatrists can work in a psychiatric room. So we've got 3 here that are shown. And ideally, you want the one who has the 2 levels. He can work as a general practitioner if he wants. So one of the things you can do is make lots of psychiatrists, and when they're not doing it, they will go and work in the general practitioner office, and they can do diagnosis and treatment while they are in the general practitioner's office. When your hospital becomes larger, meaning you have more buildings, it takes longer to get from one place to another. So with the janitors, you want to have janitors that can do everything. They need to have the ghost removal, the firefighting, the maintenance, the upgrading, the litter removal. They need everything. Otherwise, you'll have an incident such as a ghost, and you might not have someone who can resolve the situation because the building's too big. So what I do is I put everybody has the ghost. And you got to have somebody to do upgrades, right? But don't make everybody do upgrades. And you want their maintenance skills to be as good as possible, so I do a lot of maintenance skills. Okay, that is it for my staff information. It's just a little bit of an overview about how staff works. And I'm going to go over it again. For doctors, you're going to have diagnosis and treatment. For nurses, you're going to have diagnosis and treatment. For assistants, it's customer service. For janitors, it's going to be maintenance, upgrades, etc. I usually don't use anything about speed or motivation, etc. I usually only use the skills that they need. And you've got certain rooms like the genetic room and the radiology machines. I try to make one person who has all those skills so that he can work anywhere. So he'll have one of each. He'll have one for the radiology, one for the genetics machine. He'll have one for psychiatry, one for general, one for surgery, maybe. One guy that can do everything in case he's needed or when the specialists go on break. Same is true for nurses. And the other thing you want to do is know if the doctor or nurse is doing diagnosis or treatment, because some of the machines can do both, some only do one. And make sure you have the skills that are relevant for that room. So if you have treatment skills, they kind of work anywhere. If you put treatment skills in a diagnosis room, it does mean they're more likely to cure that patient. But if the patients are difficult, you're going to need the diagnosis skills. Otherwise, they're going to keep going back and forth. So, in terms of things like feeling thirsty for your staff, you want to keep the food and water and the hygiene, the hand sanitizer, and the litter basket as close to them as possible. I would put it in the room. This way, if you do that during their, like in between patients, they will go and sanitize or get a drink. And then they don't have to leave the room while there's a line waiting or something like that, because they will do it. So you want to keep them in the room ready to work as much as possible. Put a chair where they can sit and rest, for example. The other thing that I would recommend, try not to level up people to level 5 very quickly. I would kind of do it, get everybody at 1, everybody at 2, everybody at 3, because the cost of staff is really high and you could easily start to lose money in the game. And I've had to fire 5 skilled staff, put a lot of work into it. I had to fire them because I was losing money and I had no choice. Okay, and don't forget to check the statistics page so you can see how your staff is performing overall. And of course, look at individual staff members. If you want any more information, go to cheapbooks.cc and go to the video game section, look for 2 Point Hospital, which might be under some sort of business management game, and then look for staff.